Welcome back, folks. This is the Rebel's Edge, and today we're going to once again discuss crude oil and some of the crude realities right after this on the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
All right. There it is. We are on the roll. I'll tell you that right now, John. And this market is unreal. The ups, the downs, the volatility and everything else, and the volumes themselves going up and down, just as volatile as the markets themselves. I mean, we got ourselves a lot to talk about today for sure.
Yeah, including yet another UOA. That's unusual activity, folks, in the options of a stock that we're going to cover. And we covered it, Pete, on 3 at 3 as well. Nice. It's amazing how many of these are hitting. People always say to us, well, aren't you guys afraid you're going to get taken up on insider trading? No, because all we're doing is following the trades that have already happened. We can just do it better than anybody else because we've been doing it for longer, and we can separate what trades on the bid from what trades on the offer. If you can do that, you can make some money.
Let's do that, John. It's what? Because it's not an option. There you go. See, it all just rolls together.
There it is, folks. It's not an option. You can sign up for it. Get your free copy at itsnotanoption.com. He is, of course, Pete Najarian. I'm Jon Najarian, and we're going to dive into the macro minute, Pete.
Yeah.
And in macro today, I'm going to say, you know what? Durable goods orders yesterday, well, they said manufacturing was pretty hot by virtue of the look through with that, but consumer confidence is down. And I think it's down primarily because of inflation, Pete, but there could be some other reasons.
Sticking with inflation, John, and I know we've still got tomorrow, we've got Thursday, but I want to remind everybody, this is one of those situations where if you're in the options world, you better understand that Friday is not expiration. It's coming Thursday. So the long weekend is going to be wonderful and everything. But on top of that, I would say this. What does the Fed always say? There's one particular spot that they like to look at, the PCE, I believe, John. Well, that's coming out Friday. Even though we're not trading, that comes out Friday. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. The best gauge for inflation in terms of what the Fed looks at. So that one will be interesting to see how February really did kind of wrap up.
Yeah, and remember, too, folks, that not only do we not trade Friday, but Pete and I will be in Miami Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week for Grant Cardone's 10X. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be amazing. I wish I could tell you the lineup he's got, folks. Oh. First of all, you can't get a ticket. Scalpers are selling the tickets, Pete, because the in-person tickets are selling for between $3,000 and $10,000 as if it's the Super Bowl. But they've got 38,000 people signed up. And we're going to have a good time. Like I say, maybe next week, Grant and Jared will let us tell you who is going to be on besides us. But we've got a big announcement pending next week with Grant Cardone, one of the biggest guys in media. And certainly a good friend of ours. So we'll get that next week. And you know what Grant's favorite part of this show is every day, Pete?
What's that?
Fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Glad he likes it.
I think he just likes to use that Louisiana accent to say, why the hell are those guys saying I love freaking fantastic futures? I think the future's so bright I got to wear shades. That's what I think. That's what I think, John.
Oh, God.
Grant, you're the best. And yes. By the way, Pete, fantastic futures today, crude oil inventories. We had a 2-week decline, which means we were using a lot more crude than we were producing. And that can be problematic. That pushes prices up. Well, guess what? We had a jump of over 9.3 million barrels to that inventory today. So that's a reversal of what we had been seeing, Pete.
I got something that's a reversal of everything you were just talking about it with crude. How about the record corn supplies, John? We're looking at corn, the pricing of it right now, near 4-year lows. You've got to go all the way back to November of 2020 to get to kind of the levels that we're hitting right now. So, it's interesting because where you've got a lot of inflation in some things, but you look at this and you look at the harvests that we had, record harvests here, as well as Brazil, which is a big player as well. There's a lot going on. We've talked about all these various things over the last couple of months, whether it be copper or whatever, and it's pretty incredible. But right now it's corn, and corn is just going like this to the downside because there's so much of it right now.
Well, that goes into an awful lot of inputs, folks, that, of course, not so much on the tech side, but certainly on the foodstuff side, both for humans and animals. So keep an eye on that. All right, Pete, let's dive right into Merck, because the stock hits a new all-time high today, Pete. As far as I can tell, that is an all-time high. Merck is now worth $330 billion. It's turning over about 7 million shares today. And why? Well, just like Jared's showing you with that Rebel research there, they got FDA approval, Pete. They got through phase 3 trials of particular treatment for pulmonary arterial hypertension. Yep. And that's good news for the people who need some sort of relief or treatment for that. And it's great news for Merck shareholders.
Oh, it absolutely is, John. You're right. It's all-time highs. It's absolutely ripping to the upside. When you look at the 52-week now, you got to look all the way up to 133, I believe, is what it hit up to. It's pulled off a little bit of that. At least last I looked, it was about 131, but a huge move to the upside. When you look at the phase 3, it just basically checked every single box. And you never know until you actually get that approval, but then they get the approval. And that's going to be huge, I think, for Merck. It's going to be a big number. They showed 84% reduction of death because of the use of this treatment. So I think that speaks volumes. They absolutely crushed everything. When you're looking at all the different things, when you look at the placebo and you look at what this drug looks like or this treatment looks like, absolute home run, and they just keep coming and coming and coming. We've had a lot of unusual option activity over the last few months in Merck. And now all of a sudden, as you've got this FDA approval, this really shoots them up into this stratosphere where they are. But it might not even be enough, John, because this could actually be this could be one of those that they call a blockbuster, right? Blockbuster drugs are those that are $1 billion and more. Well, I would say this is probably one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And hypertension kills an awful lot of people, folks. Yep. So arterial hypertension, that's something Pete knows a lot more about than me, but I know it ain't good if you got it.
It's not.
So this is a blessing for those folks. All right, Pete, how about Robinhood? Now, normally you'd expect that it would take something like earnings to drive a stock up, but instead they announced a credit card that gives you a rebate and so forth. They did this at their keynote event that they were having. And you know who had unusual activity, folks? Pete and John had unusual activity in this one. There it is on the 18th of March, knowing that there was an event on the horizon. Somebody decided, I'm going to buy 8,000 of the 28th of March. That's tomorrow, of course, expiring 19 calls. What did they pay? 54 cents. Every option's for 100 shares. So that's $54 per option. So if you wanted a 10 lot to simulate 1,000 shares, $540. You turn $540 into 1,500. That's what I call a nice day. It's a lot nicer than a 3% cashback dividend on a credit card.
Yep. And I'll tell you this, John, they've been moving to the upside. Robinhood's been moving to the upside. A lot of different other things that have been very positive for Robinhood. It's very impressive to see what they're doing. But in particular, what they did here, John, because think about this. They paid $95 million for X1. What is X1? Well, that's the credit card that they actually are putting out there. They're issuing out there this gold card. So I find this to be an unbelievable investment. Once again, Robinhood slays it. We had the unusual. We had that great move to the upside. Actually, in the pre-market, John, we were up above $21 a share. We haven't gotten to that level yet. I think 20.50 or somewhere in that range is about where it is. But I will say this, it's incredible. I'm a little bit baffled that it was this positive for the stock, but nonetheless, we had the unusual. We'll take it, and we'll take the money and run, and then we'll look for the next unusual that comes into Robinhood.
You bet. And if you want to look for the next one, folks, check this out. We've got our marketrebellion.com/get started. We've got this great picture of Pete and Jon sitting there enjoying ourselves, looking at if you want to level up your trading with the pros. Well, we can teach you. If you need the education, we can help. We've got a bunch of great coaches and mentors that can help get you to that next level. We can also let you subscribe to any of the services that let you follow right along with the trades Pete and Jon and our coaches and mentors are doing on a daily basis. It's very, very important that you understand options before you trade them, folks. So we're never going to say just dive right in, paper trade them, start reading about it, get that free book. It's not an option.com. And let's dive into the next stock, Pete. So next stop, let's talk about what's going on with nCino, which is nCino, which is kind of a neat way for them to come up with that in terms of an acronym, Pete. But nCino is moving higher. Guidance was great. Company said they anticipate sales 126 million or more. That helped because the street was not looking for that much. And they had a consensus estimate of allegedly 128, Pete. But I think the overall thing is here that their guidance was what people were really hanging their hat on.
And they always do, Jon. Everybody, we talk about it all the time. You can have some great earnings, but you better have great guidance as well. They did. They killed it everywhere. When you look at earnings, they had been losing money at times, Jon, but they were looking for about a 12-cent this time. They actually put up 21 cents on the earnings themselves. You look at revenue, that was up about 13%. You look at full year revenue, that was up about 17%. You look at the subscriptions, that was another revenue that was a beat. So everywhere that you look on this particular name, you are seeing strong, strong, strong. They absolutely slayed it. Even their free cash flow, Jon, that was up 47%. So a lot of things going in the right direction. This is a company that's now becoming very profitable as well. And it actually makes total sense they'd be up 20%. I think this is a name, if they continue on the path that they are, they certainly could go a heck of a lot higher than they have already.
Well, that's nCino, folks. nCino. All right. How about meme stock GameStop, Pete? Because this one, man, you look back when they were having those squeezes and those, all the meme army was coming after these things and trying to squeeze out, and successfully so, I must say, some of the Wall Street shorts who were in there. This was an $80+ stock, Pete, back in 21. Today, it plumbs all the way back down to practically 12. Mm-hmm. It gets in there into the mid 13s at least today, Pete. It's a terrible day, down 14, 15%. They missed on just about everything. Year over year, sales down 12%. Meanwhile, software was down 31%. Man, they're not selling anything apparently, Pete, or not very much of anything. And that's why people are hitting the exits with both hands.
Yep. Net sales down, they missed, and you just brought it up. I mean, when you look at hardware, you look at software, even worse, down 31% year over year. These are some pretty bad numbers, and it's understandable why the stock has been pushed all the way down to where it is. And let's not forget, they still got some large shorts in there, Jon, 20 to 22%. And then you look at the cash burn. That's where I would be the most concerned right now. I'm looking at a cash burn of almost $240 million. So even though they've been pushed to the levels where they are right now, without some kind of a squeeze, and there's usually a reason behind for that squeeze, without a squeeze, I think this is a name that actually could establish itself at new 52-week lows in the not too distant future, because everything they put up looked pretty awful from my vantage point, and I do not want to touch it. The only way I'd touch this one, Jon, would be to maybe buy some puts just to kind of see how far down this thing's really going to get.
And it could be a lot lower, folks. Yeah. All right. Well, Pete, time for a little sports. I know that you're into both NCAA as well as, some draft discussions because we're getting closer and closer. And I know you love this kid. So I'll let you take over and describe what the hell it is we're looking at here with Robbie Avila.
Yeah, you go back to February 13th. We talked about this kid. We highlighted the team of Indiana State. We talked about that being Larry Bird's school. And Larry Bird ended up being in the finals. And who were they playing? Magic Johnson and Michigan State. It was Michigan State's first national championship in basketball that they'd ever gotten. And it was a good fight, John. It was at the very end, it wasn't quite as close, but it was a good fight throughout. Larry Bird and that whole crew. I'll tell you what, this kid though, Robbie, I mean, look at some of the nicknames that he's got there. It's not Kareem, it's Cream Abdul-Jabbar, and it's Larry Nerd, Larry Blurred, Milk Chamberlain. I mean, it's all phenomenal. This kid is a 6'10", 240-pound kid, does not look like a basketball player when you look at his physique. But you know what? He does look like a basketball player when he shoots from the three-point line or behind that three-point line, because they were absolutely magical last night. I got caught up in this NIT basketball game. I needed to get to sleep early. I couldn't do it because I'm watching this game just going, this is unbelievable. I mean, it really is. I mean, the Sycamores are a fun team to watch. They've got a really good free throw shooting team. They shoot from threes pretty well. Going back to 1979, that was when Larry Bird was going up against Magic Johnson. So that's a little while ago. But how about this kid, John, Mr. Clutch? 22 points last night. He had from the three-point line, he shot 50%. There's guys out there that aren't shooting 50% from the free throw line, and this kid's shooting it from the three-point line. So it's just a lot of fun. I thought it was great. You know, Cincinnati's a pretty daggone good basketball team. I know we're talking about the NIT here, but they're a pretty good basketball team, and they got a kid there that can shoot the lights out, who might be the next kid to get into the NBA, who looks like the point guard now for the LA Lakers, he can shoot it from 8 feet, 10 feet behind the arc, John. I mean, it's unbelievable what some of these kids can do. But Cincinnati had the lead at halftime, 36-32. Were they going to start to run away with it? It kind of felt like maybe that was the time. But the cool thing about this is they get to play, in this particular case, Indiana State had the better numbers for the year. They got to play a home game. They've now won 31 games, John, so far in the 2023-24 season. So outstanding to watch, really, really fun. It's not just about March Madness on the NCAA. I think these NITs can get pretty fun at times too, and this was a great game last night. Did you catch any of it or no?
No, I must say, Pete, I didn't. I would have loved to, and I do love underdog stories, and virtually everybody in the NIT is an underdog. And the University of Minnesota's been there a couple times. I think won it at least once, Pete.
Yep.
At the NITs, and that's an exciting thing for those schools, and it's neat, which you've pointed out before, because you host. I don't know how they decide who, if it's strength of schedule or what, but you get to host the games as opposed to people that go all the way over to, for instance, like Yale had to travel all the way to Spokane, Washington, to play Auburn. So tell me about that. That to me never has made sense, Pete. Do them in their geographic regions, but they don't do that. And instead, these poor kids have to go all the way across country and, in many cases, without all their support staff, because they didn't even have their band, Pete, for instance, Yale. But the Idaho band put on the Yale band's shirts.
I did not know that. That's outstanding.
And that's because you can't, it's just dumb to have Yale and Auburn playing up in Spokane, Washington, or Seattle, whichever the place, but it was way opposite end of the country. But anyway, so yes, I'm with you. I love the NITs, and I certainly appreciate the update on this Indiana State team.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. I thought it was a great game last night. I figured we had to highlight that. I mean, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, all the history behind all of this and everything else. Speaking of interesting, though, how about this, John? I figured it'd be kind of fun because everybody, Mel Kiper and all these guys, everybody's got their mock draft, right? Everybody on God's green earth has their own version of what it should look like. We're not going to look at it from that perspective. I'm going to throw it out this way. Who are the top 5 quarterbacks, and let's put them in order, that are in the draft this year? So I know the world says it's Caleb Williams. He ain't my number one, John. And I've said this before, and I'll keep on saying it. I think his size is going to be a bit of an issue when he gets into the NFL. And he's got some great numbers. I'll give him that. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, and we all know that. Not this year, but the previous year. So there is a lot to him, but I don't think he's the best. I'm going to say this. Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in this year's draft. And why do I say that? Well, they all have impressive numbers, right? I'm looking at Jaden Daniels. He's got 89 touchdowns versus 20 interceptions in his college career. Those are pretty damn nice numbers. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Jaden Daniels is athletic. And you know how many yards he ran for last year? Now, he's a quarterback, and he's a tall, skinny quarterback. He's like 6'4", 210, so he's fairly lean. He went over 1,100 yards rushing last year on top of his passing. I mean, the guy is absolutely incredible, great athlete. There's no question in my mind I'd put him at number one. The next guy, nobody believes in this guy at all except me. So maybe I'm the one guy who's either really, really wrong or they're all wrong. And I'm going to put Bo Nix, because you and I have talked about it, John. When I look at Bo Nix, is he tall? Sure. He's 6'2". He's about 215 pounds. 113 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. He gets rid of the ball quickly. He doesn't throw the ball to the other team clearly very often. I mean, I think the kid is absolutely spectacular. Drake May and Caleb Williams, I have a tough time trying to figure them out because everybody says, well, Drake May is this big kid out of North Carolina. He's got this big cannon, and he reminds me a lot of, Josh up there in Buffalo. And I look at that and I say, well, the one difference is Josh Allen actually runs with the football, and he is probably as mean and as aggressive as any tight end and as big as any tight end in football. This kid, he didn't rush for anything, John. So I don't know why they keep saying, oh, he's a big guy. He reminds me of if he's Josh Allen, he better be able to get 6 yards a carry, 7 yards a carry the way Josh Allen does, or he shouldn't be compared to him. So with him and Caleb, you got it. One guy who's pretty big, another guy who's pretty small, undersized, and both of them are throwers. They can run, but I think that they're going to get everything done by throwing it with their arm. I'm going to put those guys at dead even with J.J. McCarthy after that. So what do you think right now in terms of your 5? You might even have some name that I didn't think of that should be there.
No, I mean, I know it's not going to come down to Penix being in that top 5. He will be the 5th or 6th quarterback taken, unfortunately, because of some injuries that he suffered. But he might have the best mechanics, like we heard yesterday. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very likely that it's Caleb Williams, unless the Bears are geniuses and they have fooled the Vikings or Washington or somebody else into thinking that they're really going to take him, and instead they give him a few draft picks and the Bears can move down and take a Bo Nix or whomever, Pete. But you're right. It's Caleb, it's Jaden, it's JJ, it's Drake May. Those are the for sures. I want to throw one out who's on Mel's list, Pete. First of all, Brock Bowers, wherever he goes, Pete, he's going to make people forget about Travis Kelce pretty quick. I'm just saying it. I love you, Travis, but he's going to make people forget about you because he's big, strong. He's bigger, he's faster, and he's stronger. I would say, Pete, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and that's his name, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback out of Bama, is going to surprise some people too, because that kid is the kind of guy that can cover anybody. And right now they have him, I think, on Mel's draft board, Pete. He has him going to the Philadelphia Eagles. If he does, that makes the Eagles a hell of a lot better because they needed D-backs. Because basically there were some times when they kind of got carved up late in the season because they couldn't stop They needed Snead or Seed or whatever his name is from Kansas City. They needed somebody like that, and they didn't have him. So Kool-Aid might be that guy, especially Pete, if he ends up going to the Eagles.
Yeah. Well, it's a deep draft in certain positions for sure. I mean, when you look at wide receivers, there are so many, John, that I think that you couldn't go wrong with any of the top 5 or 6. I mean, 2 of them are from LSU.
2 of them from LSU. That's right. And they'll go in the top 20 picks. Those
for
2.
sure.
And that's why Pete's always saying, hey, Jefferson's great. But if somebody'd give you a lot, I'd trade down and take both of them.
It might tick off a lot of people, John, but I think that's the direction to go, whether you're Chicago or whoever. I mean, in this case, if I'm the Vikings general manager, I am having that discussion with every other GM right now, because you can have JJ. Maybe I pick up, multiple picks off of that whole thing, right? I mean, many picks for sure. And maybe it is somebody like the Bears or somebody who needs a receiver. So, somebody who goes crazy and they say, JJ's our guy, I would make that trade right now, because I think there's so much depth with wide receivers. You've obviously got the quarterbacks, as you were saying. There's probably 5, but there's probably as many as 6 that should be in the first round. And I'll tell you, I totally agree with you on Bowers at tight end. He's kind of a in-between guy. He's a little bit of a tweener. He's a wide receiver playing tight end and a tight end playing wide receiver. There aren't too many guys that can do that. And what he did at Georgia over the last couple of years out of Napa, California, somehow he ends up in Georgia. That kid is a stud, and he will do well in the NFL. And I'll tell you who's going to take him, Harbaugh. Harbaugh loves tight ends, and I think if he gets the chance, Bowers is coming to him. So that'll be pretty interesting. But a lot of decisions between now and draft day for these quarterbacks, but it should be fun.
Absolutely. And it is one of our favorite. Other than the combine, I think Pete and I just love watching the draft.
It's awesome.
All right, folks. Make sure that you check out down below there, marketrebellion.com/get started. Because if you go to there, you can see all of the educational offerings. We've got coaches, we've got mentors, we've got online learning. We also have a lot of subscriptions, and both the education and the subscriptions can make you a better trader and help you get to more success in trading, rather than, flailing around and trying to learn it, by hook or by crook. Errors are costly in this business, folks. So you'd rather pay your tuition rather than pay your tuition by the School of Hard Knocks. Yeah. So check out marketrebellion.com/get started. We're back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.